of the puzzle, and so doing something as simple as that and then just uploading it to the equivalent of a Google document so that you and your partner have a common starting point and have made some design decisions in advance that both you and he or she can commit to will help expedite this process. But we'll explain in the first specification exactly what kinds of things you should think about and what kinds of things you should propose. And the goal here, especially if you think you're kind of thinking ahead of the game, oh, well, I'll just write my design document afterward. So I used to do this all the time, right? Back in the day when I took 50, we actually had to write for PSETs design documents and submit them with the problem sets. And I was one of those kids who would write the problem set and then reverse engineer the design document based on the perfect sort of ideas I had from the beginning. But this does not work well for larger programs, and it does not work well when you're working with someone else, right? It's sort of just logical that if you're working with someone else, you kind of have to have that conversation at the beginning, not at the end of the project. And so this will be an opportunity to really start fleshing out the ideas for your project. And what I think you'll sometimes find is you might end up spending more of your time in a room at a whiteboard talking about, debating about how to go about implementing something, writing a pseudocode, whether on a board or in a document, and then spending less time actually implementing it. And in fact, if you've done that, that's a really good thing, because it means you sort of fleshed out all of the corner cases, thought through all of the design challenges, and then the coding part is easy because you know exactly what it is you then need to implement. Now that too is one of those things that not going to happen that way most likely the first, maybe even the second, third, or the fourth time, but that's the ideal to strive for, to spend more time arguing with each other, talking about design, and then less time ultimately coding and debugging, because indeed you'll have fewer problems to fix if you've thought through all the more. So after the proposal and then design document and style guide, you'll have to release your first beta. And the beta version of your software is meant to be as solid and as correct as you think it now is. But a few people will likely disagree, because a few days later, on a Wednesday, we'll be due code reviews for multiple classmates. So the design of the class will be such that when you submit the beta version of your code on behalf of you and your partner, so you do work together, you submit the same code, the two of you, we will then assign to one or more of your other classmates your code to then review, to bang on and try to find bugs, to critique that why do you have 5 nested for loops, to point out that it would have been nicer to read this with actual comments, and getting feedback not just from your teaching fellow, but from classmates who might be better at programming than you, who might be weaker at programming than you, but in both cases will you get the perspectives of people that you might end up working with or collaborating with. Indeed, even among the programmers who you think are, who are they to tell me how to write code? Well, if they're having trouble reading your code, like, it's not as good as you think it is, right? If it's not all that readable. And so also will the teaching fellows weigh in with feedback of their own, so that then by the following Monday, you'll have an opportunity with your partner to retool, to go back and fix the design mistakes that you made or others have proposed that you've made, and actually improve that so that you can ship your proper version of this a week later. And so this is something we just don't have time for in 50, right? Quite often, when you spend all these hours on your project, you think it's right, or maybe you know it's not quite right, but by the time you get that feedback, we're into the next cycle of another project. In this class, the goal will be to actually ship something that you feel is production quality, and it's not still with bugs, with design flaws, or with stylistic mistakes. So with those 5 milestones will we approach each of those 4 projects. So for partners, we will ask you with whom you would like to work. And I will say, just from personal experience, it is best if you can find a buddy with whom to take the course, or just someone you know who you think you would work well with. They don't have to be stronger than you or weaker than you with regard to programming. It's fine, in fact, if there's a disparity there. But really important, I think, is sort of diligence. And is this person going to pull his or her own weight? We will try as the course's staff to mitigate the issues that invariably arise between someone not pulling their weight. And we will keep that in mind so that if one person finds him or herself at a disadvantage, we'll figure out mid-semester how to deal with that, so long as you approach us. Because this happens. And I can think of a class in CS that this happened to me years ago, and it's incredibly frustrating. But you can do the best you can now to try to ward that off by choosing that person carefully. But if you don't really know anyone in the class, that's fine. There'll be an opportunity next week for us to help pair you with someone. So a word on academic honesty. So in CS50, we sent 21 cases to the ad board this past year, which is consistent statistically with past years. So this is to say that there is a line that I'd like to think is fairly well defined in the multiple paragraphs of text that appear in the course's syllabus and on every problem set, as well as in this course. But realize in all of these cases, was this line crossed by one or more of the parties? So this is not excessive collaboration or too much talking at a whiteboard. This was emailed code around, or this was copy paste. And so that is the line. And you'll see in more precise detail in the syllabus where the line here is. In this course, though, we will embrace the reality that you can learn best not just from us, and maybe not even from us, but from each other, and by having multiple eyes and minds look at your code. And so even though you'll be submitting your code as part of the beta milestone, after which you will be seeing classmates' code and they will be seeing yours, realize that within the syllabus is the specification as to what is then appropriate, and really it will boil down to citation and attribution of those ideas. The goal is to learn from each other. So if you ultimately are reviewing someone's code and you're like, oh my God, this is so much smarter than what I did, the intent is that you will then adopt, not with copy-paste, but the ideas that you're seeing there, and actually then improve your code as a result. And because of the pairing process, we'll know exactly who's been working with whom, so that we can get a sense of exactly how those ideas are propagating. Now, besides lectures, there'll be labs. So labs will happen multiple times during the week. We will finalize these once the TFs know their own schedules and you yours. Labs will be an opportunity for two things. One, hands-on activities, whereby multiple teaching fellows will make a short presentation and then roam throughout the room, where we'll have everyone on laptops on open desk areas, in some rooms on campus. And there'll be opportunities to learn how to do something hands-on, like here's how to make a flip-side view controller in iOS, or here is how to use Git in a useful way, or here's how to use this particular IDE. And then in the latter hour of these 2-hour labs will be opportunities for design consultations and for advice with regard to the projects, whether it's both you and your partner there or just one of you. But the message that we do want to send in this course is that, as we did with the final project in 50, the training wheels are deliberately off. Office hours and help, in this case, CS164.net, and email and in person. Our role is no longer so much to help you find bugs, right? There will come a time very soon, and in fact it's now, where there will not be someone else in life who can help you chase down all of your bugs. Like, you are now graduated into the class of folks who know how to find their own bugs, or at least know what tools to use to try to chase down those bugs. So just realize that whereas in 50, especially throughout most of the problem sets, the staff were really there to help you line by line. All right, let's think this through. Let's find the bug. The goal now is that you now have a partner, right? You already have a second pair of eyes that can help you. You'll have, through the code review process, yet more sets of eyes that can help you. And even though we'll certainly answer questions as they arise, do approach this course, and as much as it is meant to be a software engineering course, that it is not meant to be quite the same experience of 50, but really an opportunity to take your own skills and design capabilities to the next level. So a few final words, so that if some of you can go off and shop other classes if you'd like. A word on the nature of the hardware choices. So we could do this kind of course, frankly, with Android, with Windows Mobile, with iOS. The upside of using iOS, I genuinely think, is that it allows us to have a fairly smooth conversation from 50 into this class, if only because Objective-C, as you'll find, even though syntactically different, is a superset of C. So we don't have to have some of the same conversations as we once did, but realize all of the ideas we'll explore will be related to this and other platforms. So roughly halfway through the semester, when we transition to iOS-based native applications, code that gets compiled and run on these devices, you will need to own or have access to a Mac. We have had Hewitt, Harvard University IT, set up a lab with Lion-based Macs, because the one gotcha is your Mac has to run Lion, and you then have to download for free Xcode 4.2. So more on this in a bit, and in the syllabus and on the FAQs page of the course's website, there are some more details. And unfortunately, this is sort of the price we pay for using this particular platform, but we'll do our best to equip you if you don't have. As for the hardware, you don't need to have, but if you want to get your parents to get you something, now might be the academically most compelling opportunity to do so. But but as you saw, a simulator exists so that you won't be at a disadvantage if you don't happen to own the latest and greatest hardware. Now, as for books, so no books are required for this class, and indeed for a lot of CS courses in general, like the web is a pretty good resource, and books tend to be more out of date. But for those of you who do like the support structure of books, and there are some good references here, a quick whirlwind tour of the references that you might find helpful. So on the recommended list is this one, The Mythical Man Month, which is actually a classic text in computer science that is definitely worth a read at some point, whether this semester or in the future, and essentially speaks to the process by which the amount of time and effort in developing large software grows with the number of people involved. One of the takeaways being having lots and lots and lots of programmers actually does not solve work proportionally in the same ratio, but rather can end up slowing the process to some extent. Another classic text by the so-called Gang of Four is this book here, Design Patterns, which will explore many of the ideas from. It was published several years ago, so there are newer texts that discuss these same ideas in the context of more modern languages than, say, just Java. But this, too, is a classic text if you are an aspiring computer scientist and definitely want to have the right books on your bookshelf. Now, more in terms of practicality, this is the best book I've seen among the PHP world for actually learning some of the